There's been a lot of talk recently about native resolutions with regards to Xbox One and PS4. This could be some people complaining about the likes of, for instance, Battlefield running natively at 720 and upscaling, or, for instance, the talk that potentially a lot of Xbox One exclusives and maybe cross-platforms may have to run in 720 and be upscaled simply to sort of make up for the supposed 50% deficit in power on the graphics calls. Now, this video is sort of making quite a lot of assumptions in that we're assuming this 50% figure is true, or at least that the 50% does mean that it's kind of like half as good again, which in reality is not going to be the case. Anybody that's game with PCs, for instance, will know that you've got something like a card, say the 7970, which is 40 or 30% more powerful than the 7950, but actually in real world use there's very little difference bar a frame rate gain on kind of like really high end games that are really push the graphics card. So anyway, a lot of people seem quite upset about the idea of playing next gen games running at a native 720p and being upscaled. So what I've done is I've taken the Grid 2. I have everything running at absolutely maxed out, the best AA, the best texture filtering settings available for the game, and I've run the benchmark sequence. The only difference was I ran it twice. The first time I ran it in 1080p, and the second time I ran it in 720, and which was then obviously stretched up to reach full screen. You'll see from the two photos, which should be switching over this commentary, that there is a difference. I don't think YouTube's the best format to really show those off, but believe me, from looking on the PC screen, you do notice the lack of sharpness on the 720p. However, it's not, when you take a step back and sort of remove yourself to the kind of distance that you'd be viewing your TV at, for instance, it's not obvious. And when you're moving and when you're concentrating on the game, it's not something that you're going to go, oh man, this is like rubbish compared to what it could be in 1080. What's quite interesting though is the frame rate difference between the two. The 1080 running at 56 and the 720 running at 74. So what we can take from that is that in the future it might be a way that developers can push out a game which has the same anti-aliasing, the same texture quality, etc. on both platforms and looks sort of identical, so to speak. The only difference being the target render size that is pushed out. I think that these kind of images really do show off, kind of, if we assume that we were bringing them in at the same frame rate, they do show off what the real difference actually is between the PS4 and the Xbox One. And while some people might like to think that that makes the Xbox One just a complete waste of space, I think anybody that's got a subjective head on them will appreciate that. For the average person that isn't hung up on the difference between 720 and 1080, that it doesn't really matter. So if you decide that, hey, I like Halo, I like Fable, I'm interested in what the Remedy guys are doing, you are not going to have a completely destroyed experience the rest of the time just for those exclusives. Yes, it might not be quite as nice as the PS4 version, but what I'm trying to say is that the technical difference shouldn't really be making you choose which platform you make. If you've always been an Xbox owner and you want those Xbox games, don't let what people are saying to you that the PS4 is this like gigantic beast that's going to completely wipe the floor with the Xbox. Don't believe that, and just go with the system that has the games on that you want. I mean, for me personally, something I understand that a lot of people don't is that it's not good. A lot of the PlayStation fanboys, if you want to call them that, are harping on, and that they talk like they want the Xbox to be this catastrophic failure, but they don't understand that that's bad for them. Xbox needs to be successful in order for PlayStation to have an incentive to keep developing great games, to keep pushing things forwards. If Xbox is a complete failure and everybody buys a PlayStation 4, there is no incentive for Sony to improve any of their services sort of beyond what they've already offering on day one. I should point out at this point that I'm fully intending, I've got pre-orders for both systems. on day one, so there's no. I'm beginning to sound a bit like a Microsoft apologist in this video, but really that's just because we're making the assumption that the Xbox One is this 50% or however much it's going to be weaker than the PlayStation 4, and it's just pointing out that sort of the drop to 720 native resolution does basically take that difference, that delta, and squashes it away. And hopefully by showing you those images, you can look at those and say, okay, potentially, best guess that we have at the moment, that's the kind of difference that you could potentially be dealing with if you decided to go down the Xbox One route. So let me know in the comments, do you feel that now you can see it and not just talking rubbish on the internet, now you can actually see the real world difference between what a 720p native and what a 1080p native image actually will look like when you're playing a game? Is it, or does it have a major impact on your buying decision? Of course, please be aware that all of this video is effectively built on the massive assumption that developers will potentially drop to 720 in order to achieve graphical parity across Xbox One and PlayStation 4. That might, of course, be complete nonsense, and they'll actually turn the AA down on the Xbox, or they'll turn the texture quality down on the Xbox, or however they decide to go about it to get the game to run on both platforms.